3, 2, and 1. Well, Mayor Katie, thanks for making time for us on Friday for Mayor's Monday here at WSAU, WSAU.com. I guess we'll go ahead and pick. I mean, what happened this week? What do you want to talk
you
about
want me
first?
To pick, huh?
Pick.
Yeah,
I mean, what
yeah.
happened this week that,
Yeah,
or what didn't happen?
Yeah, it's been a tough week, and there's been a lot going on. So why don't we jump right into the water issue, because that affects almost everybody.
Pretty much, yes.
So yeah, we discovered in our testing that we did in January that we have elevated levels of PFAS. So we worked with the DNR, then DHS, and our local health department folks that are here to support us too on alerting the public, because that's part of the protocol when you discover these elevated levels. And so now we are holding some emergency meetings, well, special meetings, pick your choice of words. I guess special is probably what we're calling them.
Right.
Special meetings for this week, if this is airing on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So we already have our utility commission meeting scheduled for Tuesday at 9 a.m. If anyone's interested, it'll be on public access, on YouTube, people in the chamber. And we're working towards getting that special council meeting shortly thereafter, likely on Wednesday. So we need to consider what our next steps are. We have a couple of options for the short term, and then obviously in the next 7 months or so, we'll be opening our new drinking water facility. So we'll want to make sure that we're using the right technology in that facility so that we're filtering out all those PFAS too.
So I guess from one way to look at it, if you want to go through the rose-colored glasses, I guess we'll do that first.
Okay.
In the next 7 months, when this drinking water facility opens and the $40 million investment that this community has made is realized,
Yep.
Is there a chance that this won't be an issue at that time?
Yeah, that's the expectation. That's the expectation I'm setting forth on our team. Because there are technologies we can employ to make sure that we're filtering out these PFAS, that we're below the DNR's health advisory. And the other thing we need to consider is that obviously we have these kind of dueling health recommendations from the federal and the state government. So right now the EPA's health advisory is 70 parts per trillion, which again, when we're talking parts per trillion, it's like droppers in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So it's a small amount that can cause these problems. So we're expecting them to come up with their own recommendation by October. And in the meantime, we have the Wisconsin DNR, who we work most directly with, and their health advisory is right now at 20 parts per trillion, which is lower, obviously, and they're pushing that through their rulemaking process this month. Even they're taking that recommendation to their board. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, anything would have to go through the legislature. I've been in touch with our state senator and our state representative. We'll be meeting to kind of discuss some options. Been talking to our Senator Baldwin, been talking to folks, the policymaking team in the Evers administration, just kind of getting a lay of the land. What are our options? What can we do? So my goal for next week, or this week if this is when you're watching it, is to ensure that the council and the utility commission have a menu of options to choose from. And also that we can identify the funding sources so we can pull the trigger and get going on this right away.
Yes, indeed. And the other side of this that's kind of come out in the last week, I guess, is almost the infamous question: what did we know, and when did we know it, and
Right.
who knew it at that time?
Right.
There's been a lot going on about the testing that occurred in 2019.
Right.
We may have known as far back as then. Is that something that you're looking into as well? Because a lot of people want to know why we're learning about this here in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did know that we had some testing in 2019. I think you've probably seen the email from the citizen kind of floating around asking about our levels. And what I understood is that we were underneath the recommended levels from both the DNR and the EPA. Now, I don't know what kind of conversations took place before I got here. Obviously, I wasn't here in 2019. So there could have been conversations there. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it. And, those are serious questions that we need to ask ourselves. At the end of the day, I understood our results to be elevated when we started talking about this at our utility commission meeting in January. So.
Yes, so we'll find some more information about that later on down the road. So what can people expect then at these two meetings that are going to be coming up here in the next week?
Yeah, so I want this to be very solutions oriented, and obviously the most important solution right now is the short term. we need to make sure that we're providing equitable access to safe drinking water for everyone. And so there are a couple of options there. My favorite option is mobile filtration units that can be hooked up to our existing plants. And that means that everybody that turns on their spigot would have access to water that is under that 20 points per trillion. That feels like the best answer. I don't have a cost on it yet, but I'm hoping to next week when we have these meetings so that the council can decide that this is how they want to spend their funding.
Yes, indeed. I know the other options are kind of bottled water, maybe some mobile filling stations that go around town. Those are also going to be on the table.
Yep,
at this
those
time,
are on the
right?
table. You know, there are certain Brita filters, kind of the more expensive, higher end filters. Those are the ones that seem to filter out the PFAS. So that's an option too. We could order pallets of those for folks. You know, but right now in the short term, you know, DHS is telling people, you know, you should limit your exposure to PFAS. What does that look like? You know, drinking filtered water, which is what I've been doing. I've been using one of those sink filters to limit my exposure. People can buy some bottled water, although, you know, now everyone's posting articles about how bottled water contains some of this stuff too. So understanding what's in your water is critical, and obviously this is an emerging science, so we're all kind of learning this as we go, which is not comforting.
Not at all. I mean, especially for people like us that want the best for ourselves. They want the best for our pets as well.
Right.
So for the time being, then, what is your best advice to residents as we go through this in the next few weeks?
Yeah, so keep paying attention. I would love to hear from folks about their concerns, any ideas they might have. You know, obviously we'll have some public feedback, some time for that, especially at the special council meeting. There will be public comment there. I'm not sure about the other two meetings, if it's just going to be working for them. You know, it really does depend on the chairs. But I want to hear from folks. You know, if you're working on limiting your exposure, I would recommend, you know, looking at some of those options, whether that's the reverse osmosis. You know, you see those machines at the grocery store, that'll work great for you. The filters for your sink or the pitcher, you know, you want to make sure you're getting the right one. DHS has some great advice on that, so check out their website. We've got a link to it on our website. And then there's bottled water, which again, it's, you know, you have to decide what you want. But at the end of the day, like everyone, I want to make sure that everyone is empowered to make that health decision for themselves. And that's why my goal is to make sure that we have like equitable access to water that is below the DNR's health advisory here.
Yes, indeed, and we will see where this all goes, because again, this is going to be a discussion we'll have probably for most of 2022 for the going forward here until that new treatment plant is open.
Right, yeah, and I would expect, I mean, you know, we talked a little bit before we started recording, you know, there are other communities in the same boat, kind of wondering if they should voluntarily test. Maybe they have already tested. The Evers administration just announced all that funding for voluntary testing. Now, if communities take advantage of that, they will be required to do the mandatory noticing like we were. So you might be hearing a lot more about this in a lot of different places. So,
and your advice to those communities then, you know, is it get out in front of this now, because we want to be able to know what we're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my opinion that it's better to know than not. I want to make sure that I can make the right decisions for the health and safety of our community, and I can't do that if I don't have the data. So having the data is really important, and we're just going to have to decide what our priorities are. So if we decide that we don't care about the health advisory, well, I mean, at least that's a democratic decision. But my inclination is that we do care.
Next thing we wanted to ask you about is obviously something that before this all happened in the week, the community got concerned about, which was the arrest of one of the recent refugees on charges of 4th degree sexual assault. That's again a misdemeanor, and those are charges at this time. There's been absolutely no formal charge against him yet. There's been a lot of data that we don't know about this, so we want to frame it in that light as well. What's your message to the residents? Because obviously you were photographed with this man. You've been cheerleading these refugees, since they got here, welcoming them to the community, like, the mayor should. But just tell us what's your message to those residents right now that might be concerned about this.
Yeah, I would say, our police department investigated it immediately upon it being reported, and actually, upon hearing about this, encouraged the victim to make sure that they were reporting this and getting the resources that they need. So number one, our police, they were right on this. So anyone who experiences anything like this should feel confident that they can go to the police. They'll be taken seriously, and this crime will be investigated. So there's that. And I would also say it's not a reflection on all Afghan refugees or a reflection on Afghan culture. I think that's probably something that we're coming to learn more about these folks, and they come from all over, just like all of us. They have different experiences and expectations. So again, I would encourage people to keep an open mind, but always, it's important to keep your own personal safety in mind too, making sure that you're aware of your surroundings, that you're with people that and that people know where you are. So there's a lot going on. It's unfortunate, but I know that our team is working really hard to ensure that there's justice and that due process is also followed.
Yeah, indeed, because kind of what I'm hearing from that is this gentleman is going to get he's in America now, and part of the expectation of that is that you follow the American laws, and he is going to be held to those standards just like anyone else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everybody here will be treated equally under the law, right? That's the expectation that I have for every single citizen here. We don't touch people without their consent. Nobody. So, and if you do, like, the expectation is that could be a crime that's reported. So the expectation is also that you will get just treatment and due process. So this is a hard thing for our community, and I understand people are scared, but I hope that people understand it shouldn't be a reflection on an entire culture.
Yeah, indeed, because we're getting close to 70 or 50, 60 of these refugees that have been resettled now. Obviously, you've had a chance to talk to a lot of them. Again, we mentioned this individual included. What have those conversations been like with the refugees? I guess outside of the standard, we're glad to be here.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people looking for jobs. I've heard from folks who we actually interviewed somebody here who has some expertise that we're looking for. So there's really just that motivation to get a job. One gentleman, our deputy police chief, talked to, and he's like, how can we help you? And he's like, I just want a job to support my family. That's all I want to do. So I think you're going to hear from a lot of folks who are looking for that exact experience. They want to be able to actualize their own American dream, whatever that looks like, find purpose, and make sure their families are safe and provided for. So that's what I'm hearing from folks.
And again, you don't want this one incident to kind of characterize all of them that are coming here.
Yeah, and I know it's hard. I know it's really hard to hear about this and not try and extrapolate this to be some kind of a cultural thing. But really, I mean, it shouldn't be. We're going to give people the benefit of the doubt, and if they break our trust and our laws, they will be held accountable, just like I would be, or just like you would be.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And again, we will hope for the best and for the outcome. Obviously, we hope for the best for the victim as well. I know you mentioned the victim in your statement earlier this week as well. What kind of resources are they getting, through the police department or elsewhere? Yeah,
I can't speak to exactly what kind of resources this victim is availing themselves to, but in general, we have a whole victim resource unit that addresses these issues. So a victim of any crime, it doesn't have to be just a sexual assault type of crime. So we have a therapist that can help folks. We have a specialist that will help them maybe work through the court process and answer any questions and make sure that victims understand which proceedings they need to be at versus not. So we have a whole lot of resources. We also have access to funding sources for folks, like crime compensation and things like that. So if you're a victim of a crime, we have resources to help you if you're a Wausau resident.
Indeed. And one more question then before we let you go, because it seemed like it was a bad week. It wasn't all bad, though. We do have some good stuff coming up here. Obviously, the 150th celebration is already kicked off for Wausau. And we've got some other great stuff as well.
Yes. So yeah, we're 150 years old this year. I know it doesn't feel like it, and we're spring chickens around here, right? But
Right.
but that's happened. I would say probably the other kind of exciting news is, we've been working on this criteria for how we'll spend our ARPA funding, which, spending money, it's really, that is like the purpose of us being here is how do
Mhm.
we use our resources, the taxpayer dollars that have been collected on behalf of the federal, the state, and the local government, how do we put those to the best use for our community? So expect some good conversations over the next few months about how we're going to spend that money. We're getting some information on how the federal infrastructure bill can affect us. So a lot of that's going through the state. Again, $10 billion for PFAS remediation through that infrastructure bill. So we're hoping for some good solutions for our drinking water facility, those permanent solutions. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, indeed. I know. Obviously, you don't have control of the checkbook, like maybe some people might say you do, or some people may think you do. What though? With the federal infrastructure dollars, the federal ARPA funding, which
Yep.
actually you're going to get the next tranche of that here
Yep,
pretty soon.
quick.
What is it that's on at least your priority that you may want
Right.
to steer some of the conversation to?
Yeah, so if I could make these $1 million decisions on my own, you can bet I'd be making the best recommendations I could, and I'll still be doing that. But the council will have to decide on how we spend these dollars. That's what we have done. That's how we're set up as a democracy. So we'll make these recommendations. So some of the things I'm looking forward to talking about, obviously, PFAS remediation is like now just kind of moved up to the top spot, right? Like that's really important. But we have some other projects that I would really love to work with. I'm interested in figuring out how to support local entrepreneurs, local startups. Wisconsin's last in the nation when it comes, maybe not last anymore, but we've been last for startups. So how do we encourage folks to start up a business here? What do they need? So that's some information I'm looking for. I'm interested in helping and working with some of our local, like the Hmong Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce and maybe some others. How do we address kind of that gap between businesses that are minority owned and other businesses? Is there anything special we can do? Affordable housing, that's on all of our lists. So hopefully our Affordable Housing Task Force will help us come to some solutions and we can allocate some funding towards that. So there's a lot. When you start thinking of all the things you want to do, $15.7 million isn't actually enough to do everything you want to do, but it's a lot, and we can be transformational in ways that we couldn't have been before.
And I know there was one suggestion last week at the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee meeting about Wausau's remnant parcels. Going around town and finding where's the random little plot of land that the city owns that's surrounded by land owned by other people. How do we put those on the market, sell them, and maybe use that to jumpstart some affordable housing in this city? I know that's one idea that's maybe kind of being floated among the council right now.
Yeah, I think I welcome all of these ideas. Obviously I was a little bit busy. I didn't attend CISM last week, but I'm interested in all of these ideas. Again, like we are only better with the diversity of opinions that we have here. So that's really important. I don't know what we do with those little plots otherwise. Put little gardens on them. I'm not sure. So there are options. But yeah, I want to make sure this is impactful and we're making these good decisions.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing where these conversations go and what ends up happening. It's sure to be a busy week.
It's going to be busy, tell you what. Thank you.